or perceived, it can be tough to stay positive, right? It's so easy to fall into that tunnel vision of, spiraling, of seeing only what it isn't working. So we wanted to talk today a little bit about how to create that positive mindset, and what is the reality of the positive mindset versus sort of a myth of it, and how can you create that for yourself? So there's actually a quote that I really like to share on stream today. It's from an article, excuse me, on CBC Life, and I just thought it was a great way it was a very eloquent way of stating this. Nicole Mahaber is the lady who wrote this beautiful thing, and it's something that I certainly share the same perspective with, especially as growing up. I always hear, "Wow, you're such a positive person. You're so happy all the time. Oh my God, teach me to be like you." And it's like I am the cynical, jaded person on the inside who sees the worst and expects bad stuff. But I choose to not dwell on that as best as I can most of the time. And so this is what she says, and it's great. Keeping a positive view on life is not pretending to be happy and hopelessly self-affirmed, like I think I can, but deep down inside I don't really believe I can kind of feeling. It's really just seeing things as they are, with a positive outlook about how we can create a beneficial change in our lives. When we begin to focus on the areas of life that are not working, we can become overwhelmed and feel helpless. Seeing things as they are, and not worse than they are, can help us to clearly realize the actions that need to be taken to create the change that we want. So shifting your focus to positive action is a great way to start turning things around for a better day. And again, just because, if something bad happens, it doesn't mean that you ignore it and you say, "Oh no, that wasn't a bad thing, that was a good thing," right? Like that's not seeing things for how they are. And if something bad happens, focusing on the bad of it for too long also doesn't lead to productive anything down the line, because then you just start thinking about negative stuff. You're going to start potentially acting negatively towards yourself, towards others, and it just begins this kind of spiral, like downward spiral. So it's shifting the focus away from that and more into really being present and like, what is the situation? What is my next step going to be to get me out of the situation, to get me out of thinking about the situation, that kind of thing, or how can I fix it? And Nicole actually has a really nice set of like a checklist, if you will, I guess, of what you can do to create more of that positive mindset. So the first thing, and we talked a little bit about this in our last episode of 2017, where we talked about gratitude, being more mindful. We talked about this in our last episode, I believe, as well, when we talked about how to deal with rejection and that sort of thing. So there's a common theme that you'll probably hear here, and that's because they're all sort of interconnected. The first thing is to understand the root of your feelings. So the moment that you kind of see a negative emotion arising within you, or there's a negative event has happened, you can really decide whether you want to engage with that emotion in a destructive manner, or if you want to observe it and not be consumed by it, and then be able to a little bit, I guess, disengage from the fact that it's that emotion and be able to see it clearly and more objectively. The next step would be to become aware of your inner dialogue and your negative self-talk. And I mean, we all do it. I do it all the time. I look myself in the mirror and I'm like, ugh. And just that ugh, that is negative self-talk. You don't have to be berating yourself with complete sentences in your brain to be negative about it, right? And that's your inner bully. And you tell your bully to shut the fuck up.
You bully your inner bully. No.
You tell it, no, you sit down. But, the moment that you begin that negative self-talk, you're you're choosing to engage in basically self-conflict, self-sabotage. And you just need to take your attention out of that destructive thinking and focus on something else. People recommend focus on your breathing, focus on your immediate surroundings, really ground yourself in the present and pull yourself out of that negative self-talk and your own sort of dialogue. Like, we all have, things we'd like to improve about ourselves. We all have things that we'd want to improve about a situation that we're in. You're always in your brain, right? Because like you're with yourself 24/7, and you just be kind to yourself, man. But just become aware of that. Like if you're experiencing something that is negative in the outside world, and then you start to internalize that negativity, it's going to now be present in your inside world as well. And it's so hard to get out of that. Especially if you're not aware of it. So just practice that a little bit more. And then, Eckhart Tolle mentions that when a negative thought when a change can happen when you take a negative thought and use it as an opportunity to practice this mindfulness. Again, just being present in the moment.
And real quick, too, George mentions in chat here, he says, I forced myself to think 2 positive things about myself every time I thought 1 negative thing about myself. And just doing that for a couple months improved my outlook. And I think that's absolutely on point. I think that's awesome. So for one, congratulations, George, on that, because it isn't easy, right? It's very hard to start up a habit and to also be positive. In many ways, there are many people that are willing to look down on people who are trying to be positive. And I think in many ways it's subconscious, because we can get frustrated and go, well, they're positive. Why can't I be? And I'm not very positive right now. I don't feel great. So I'm not happy that they feel great and I don't. Why does it have to be them? And so I think it's very easy to spin that and then also feel that pressure from outside forces and go, well, am I crazy if I'm actually positive to myself? Like if I say nice things to myself about myself, is that being egocentric? Is that being, just a complete self-absorbed asshole? Like, what is that really? But honestly, it can be a huge benefit, especially if you're real with yourself. You know what I mean? If you say, well, I'm the most amazing, gorgeous human being in the world. Maybe you are. I don't know. I'm not going to say. But honestly, let's be realistic about some of the things you do say positive about yourself then. So for instance, in George's case, you could say, well, maybe, one day, because he is a game designer, so maybe one day he didn't design something the way he wanted it to, and it doesn't function right or look right with everything else. He could beat himself over it, but he could also go, well, you know what? There are not many people willing to take on game design that can do what I just did. And there are not many people who may be willing to see the issue and actually try to go in and correct it and successfully correct it. And maybe he does then. And so it is about also seeing the good in things too, and understanding the positive moments that you can have.
Right. That's a great point. And thank you for that well-placed comment. It's like, this is all like you're putting this article into action. You've been putting this kind of what this article talks about into action already. And that's fantastic. And exactly, being realistic is a great point that you brought up, Evin. That's exactly what, becoming aware and becoming mindful of exactly what it is that is happening. You have to be realistic about it. You can't just be like, oh, I'm the tallest person ever. It's like, no, I'm not. I realize this, but I'm not beating myself up over it. Right. If I stood up straight, I'd be taller. Right? So it's like I practice standing up straighter.
You can get things on low shelves. You know how hard? I'm 6'4". Do you realize how hard it is to get something from a bottom shelf and to be able to see everything clearly? So there you go. There's one positive among many for being a certain height.
And you fit better in airplane seats, let me tell you, because your knees don't like when you're short.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's good. It's another positive thing. Anyways. So there's a whole show about what Tatiana wishes she was. The next thing is to pay attention to your own emotional needs. So, we all sit there and we're all at some point guilty of this. I'm fairly certain. we want to be inspired, right? We want to wake up in the morning and we want something to happen or someone to happen and inspire us to like go and do things, right? But sometimes you got to start that yourself. You've got to actually set aside times to do activities that you love, that make you feel balanced, that make you, that help you stay positive. And you have to sort of get that in motion yourself in order to feel inspired and motivated, right? Like, unfortunately, it's very hard to just get the outside world to always positively affect us, right? So we have to but we have to start that from the inside. And some days it's a lot easier than others. And some days it's impossible to do, but you got to take it one day at a time. And like when we're talking about the gratitude, it's a muscle, if you will, that you have to develop over time, right? This, as George was mentioning, you got to do that a few months maybe to actually see the results that you're looking for, right? You're not necessarily going to do this for one day and boom, you're the most positive person on the planet. This is actually mindfulness, or meditation, I should say, is something that gets a lot of flack because a lot of people say, well, I tried meditating for 10 minutes the other day and it sucked. It's like, well,
it didn't change my life instantly.
Right.
It's like going to the gym, staring at the equipment and going, I don't feel a six-pack of abs coming here. I want my money back.
Right. It's something you have to practice over time, and it's something that you have to cultivate for yourself. So, goals and new experiences and doing the activities that you love don't always create lasting happiness, right? Especially because our bodies are also trained to get a little bit less of the high that you get when you do something that you like. Like, I listen to the same song, if a new song comes on the radio and I love it, I listen to that on loop constantly, but over time you just don't really get that same hype from it.
Right.
And you have to look for something else. So, and that's totally fine. You may find that happens, but it doesn't mean that you have to give up as well. And thank you so much, Teddy, for that raid. Welcome, everybody, to our show. We are talking about how to create a positive outlook for yourself.
Yeah, and so far we've spoken about, again, just kind of giving yourself affirmations, avoiding the negative self-talk, and really hitting on some things that are positive too. Because it is so very easy to fall into the trap of, well, that sucked. Well, that didn't meet expectations. Well, just because it didn't meet expectations doesn't mean it was a bad thing. But again, we get so stuck on that it's so easy to fall in that trap. And now we've been talking about also paying attention to your emotional needs. So I know, like, for instance, you mentioned like a certain song that you bring on.
Right. Kind of do the things that typically do have a positive effect on you, especially if you do need a little bit of a help to kind of create that inspiration for yourself. But at the same time, realize that a lot of the time, you do have to set something in motion yourself in order to feel the feelings that you want to feel, that you can't just wait for the outside world to like come to your doorstep and like make you feel better. And that you are really in control of that. And honestly, at least speaking from my experience, a lot of the times when I feel like shit's not going right or that sucked, it's because I felt like I didn't have control. That things were just happening to me, and they were happening to me in a way I didn't want them to happen to me. And so a good way to sort of, again, deal with those emotions and realize that, is look at the actual situation that's happening, and actually look at it for the situation that is happening objectively as you can. Stop the negative talk, the negative self-talk, and then focus on what actions you can take in the future or right now that can positively affect you as well. If that makes sense. I feel like I was talking a little bit in a circle.
But yeah, like ideally, for instance, if you're at work and you're like, your body is telling you and your mind is telling you, I should be taking a break right now, but then you're pushing through it, what are you doing? You're actually stressing yourself out more. You're putting more pressure and more negativity onto your body and onto your mind. So again, it's about listening to your emotions. How do I feel? Well, my body's telling me not to do this. All right, let's take a break. Let's listen to some music. Let's get a snack. Let's get some coffee. Let's talk to someone for a little bit. Hey, Susan in accounting isn't doing shit, so let me go over there and talk to her. Whatever. Like Susan, always freaking Susan. So, go and take that break and listen to your body. I think that's one of the biggest things. People also push the fact of sleep. Like, oh, well, I'm tired. All right, well, let's load up on caffeine. Let's get the Mountain Dew going. Let's get the Red Bull going. And again, I do the same thing at times. I'm not perfect by any shake of a stick. But honestly, though, after a while, I get to the point where it's like, no, enough is enough. My body really needs sleep. If I'm feeling tired after a freaking Red Bull, it's time to take a break. And it's time to close my eyes and just down cycle for a little bit. And it's amazing because I feel like we take better care of our tools, like our phones and everything else, and never ourselves. And we just ignore what our body's telling us. And even if it's about negativity, we seem to fall for it and just kind of keep it going and keep it running rather than stopping it and going, no, actually.
Right, because we don't have anybody, if we start negative self-talk, we don't have anybody to stop us from doing that, right? Because we're inside our heads. Like if I went up to you and I was like, Evan, your hat sucks today and your shirt's dirty and your face is weird, you could very well be like, fuck you, stop that. I'd be like, oh, okay, right? Or whatever. But there's at least that potential. But when you're looking at yourself in the mirror or when you're thinking about a situation that just happened that you were involved in, if you just start saying, that fucking sucked, I should have done that, and blah, 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 there's nobody else in there, most of the time, to say, no, stop that. You're being an asshole to yourself. You've got to be that gatekeeper. You've got to stop your negative self-talk, as it were. Another thing to do is to move your body, whether it's, if you're kind of feeling stuck, whether it is to physically get up out of your chair or go take a nap if you need it, but it's doing something that puts you in actual motion because it forces your mind to pay a little bit of attention to something else, for one. But it basically just gets your mind focused on something else. And it can also have benefits physically on your body because if you're going to go get a massage, right, then you've got something else happening to your muscles. Like maybe you were, hunched over your desk like this, or you were closed off, and then just the very action of moving opens you up and gives you a different perspective. And the last two things that we're going to talk about is making small changes to create that positive atmosphere that you're looking for. So creating an environment that is nurturing and that is meaningful for you. Not what you see in a magazine, not what you see on Instagram, not at, that party that you were at last week that everybody loved the house of, or the whatever.
IKEA showroom you had just visited and stayed in for the past, 2 hours.
I mean, unless you like the IKEA showroom, in which case buy the whole thing out. I don't know. I'm just saying. But you have to find what adds value to your life and actually inspires you, and we're talking about small changes because that's how, one, you create a habit, but two, it doesn't have to be a big change. You don't have to move across the country. You can if you want to, but you can have small changes. You can, get yourself a salt lamp and turn it on and put it on your desk at work. You can, listen to your favorite music. You can wear the colors that make you feel happy. Wear the clothes that make you feel happy. You can take that 10-minute break, go outside, take a deep breath, fresh air, whatever it is. These are all apparently mine because that's all I can come up with.
Well, it could be
Go
even
pet that cat.
It could be even the fact that, for instance, when we all, let's say, have a corporate job, or, many of us have had a corporate job, I'm sure at one point in time we were all stuck in some sort of cubicle. And what do so many people do, right? They put up photos of their pets, of their family, and of random things. And yeah, it can seem a little kitschy, right? But at the same time, it does help from a psychological perspective, bringing in things that bring in warm emotions, that help bring in more of a spark of happiness and positivity instead of this more sterile kind of feeling of an office, can really help you psychologically and boost up energy levels and make you feel more motivated and more driven, and can make you feel more happy and just overall having a better time. And so that's something to think about too. Like, so many people already do it, but they don't do it in every aspect of their life, only potentially in the cubicle life, in the cubicle farms, but never in their own home or in their own I don't know, whatever, friend's house, or, wherever you go where you feel like there's those stressors, how can you adapt and change those or work with that space to make it feel more like a positive atmosphere?
Exactly. And that positive atmosphere, we're also talking about on the inside, which again means eliminating some of that negative self-talk, and maybe saying some good stuff too, making that small change. Like, if every day you say 5 things that you hate about yourself in your mirror, maybe say 4 tomorrow and say 1 good thing. Right? Try to find the thing that is not so negative. And then the last thing, and again, it touches back on what we talked before, but it's spreading gratitude, and not only to others, but also to yourself. So spreading some self-love as well. And, focus on, instead of focusing on what you don't have and what is not working, focus on what you do have and focus on what is working. And be grateful for, the positive elements that do exist in your life. Because that can actually impact how you feel. And George was a great example of this, as he brought up, as he mentioned earlier in chat as well. It took a couple of months, but now he has a more positive outlook than before. And, whether it is that self-love can happen in a variety of ways, whether it is just talking to yourself in a positive way, in a less negative way than normal, or you do the activities that give you joy or inspire you, or you buy the stuff, or you surround yourself with the things that make you happy.
Yeah, like for instance, if you're like, hey, I want to take a break and I really want to play this game, then, every once in a while, go ahead and play the game, have some fun with it. You're on a diet and you're just really craving a piece of cheesecake or something with sugar in it, then go ahead and have the damn piece of cheesecake, every once in a while. I mean, again, whatever makes you happy that won't kill you, go ahead and do it, right? Or doesn't kill someone else, I should say, too.
Right. It's spreading gratitude and love to all things.
Exactly. It's like, if you want to make someone's day, what would you do for them? Now think about how you can do that for yourself.
Exactly. And there's is actually an ancient Buddhist practice called metta bhavana, and it was used to increase compassion and love and kindness towards others. And metta means love, bhavana means cultivation. It's literally a cultivation of love, and that's been shown that it can increase positive feelings as well. And you start off by repeating positive affirmations about yourself to yourself, but then also you are repeating positive affirmations about someone that you care about, and also somebody that maybe created some difficulties for you in the past. And it's, again, spreading out the good and practicing, working that muscle of positivity, even towards others that maybe you feel don't deserve it. But that just helps you, because it helps you kind of let go of that negativity and helps you then not have to focus on that, let's say later when you meet that person. So it's a very interesting, I thought it was an interesting concept that I will try next time I am somewhere by myself meditating. But yeah, I think for me, the focus out of all of this is, again, sort of being in the moment and really listening to yourself and what is happening around you, not adding on, kind of trying to perceive the situation or the event or the self-talk for what it is rather than what you think it might be, or adding these extra perceptions onto it, like, oh, that went really bad. And it's like, did it though? Maybe it didn't. Maybe one thing didn't go as you had expected, but maybe the actual overall thing went well, that kind of thing. And really looking at it from a more objective standpoint. And then doing good things for yourself, nice things for yourself. Because as you mentioned, we take better care of our phones and our cars. And I've seen people wash their cars like it's a freaking gold diamond baby or something. Like, it's amazing, right? But it's like, do they take that good care of themselves, like that same good care for them of themselves as well? It's like, I don't know, maybe they do, maybe they don't. But it's taking care of us first and listening to what we need. That will ultimately help us feel better, and it will ultimately help us have better interactions with external things, people, events, situations, environments.
Yeah, we talk a lot about this actually back in December when we talked about gratitude. And again, showing gratitude for yourself, showing gratitude for others around you, and how, again, you create or culture this sense of gratitude, sense of positivity, and it does spread, just like negativity too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you lock people up in a room and everyone seems like, okay, this is different, but they're calm. All it takes is one person to start screaming and yelling for everyone to get tensed up and to start getting angry at one another and going after one another. Or it could take just one person on the flip side of that to say, we're all going to be okay. Things are going to be all right. And people will start having that mentality as well. So it's up to you to decide, well, which person do you want to be? Do you want to be the asshole yelling at people or, in making things worse, putting fuel to the fire? Or do you want to be that person that really does make a positive change and thus, too, being the recipient of positivity?
And to take that one step further, once you say this is going to be okay, the next step then is to, okay, what actions can we take to further a positive environment? And if everybody wants to get out of that room, then the next action would be like, okay, let's find a way out. Mm-hmm. Let's get together and this and that. If the group wants to stay in the room, then everyone can just be like, great, let me find a comfortable spot and hang out. So it also informs your next actions and your next decisions. If that person starts yelling instead and getting all riled up and everyone's like that, right? There's no chance at that point to really figure out what you want to do next, because you're just, a lot of the times, right, you're probably just reacting to what's happening, and it feels like things are happening to you. I'm locked, like the door locked on me, or and it can make you feel like you're losing control. And as soon as you feel that you've lost control, it's harder to get out of that mindset to realize that your next action can actually impact something later down the line. It just sort of feels like it's all happening and you have no idea what to do.
Right. And Static in chat also has a great point. He says, that's a good point as it relates to grudges. Hanging on to stuff from the past can just keep hurting you and has no effect on the person you're spending all that effort hating. And this actually reminds me of a kind of Buddhist story or affirmation. And I will try to summarize this as quickly as possible without being too long-winded here. But basically, there's these two Buddhist monks, and they get told by their master, okay, I want you to walk from our monastery to this village, and you'll have some things to do there, so on and so forth. And the master says, well, you cannot stop for anything. I want you to continue on and continue over to that village. You don't talk to anyone, just move forward and get there, because it's important you get there in a certain time span. And so the monks go, okay, and they start walking, and they get closer to a river with a bridge on it. And they see a woman who's flailing in the water, and she's obviously drowning. She cannot swim. She must have fallen over the bridge, over the edge of the bridge, and fallen into the river. And so one of the monks keeps going. The other monk stops, runs in, pulls her out of the water, and makes sure she's okay, and then catches up with the other monk. And so they keep going to the village, and suddenly the monk turns to the other one who saved that girl's life and said, I don't understand why you did that. Our master clearly said that you were not supposed to stop and that you should have kept going this whole time. But you defied our master. You went in and saved that girl's life. Why did you do that? And the other monk goes, look, I only carried her from the water to the shore. You've been carrying her ever since. So this guy had let it go. He had saved the girl's life. She was okay. He moved on with his life. The other monk, not so much. The other monk was carrying that situation on his shoulders the entire way until he ended up bringing it up to the other monk. And, I was like, that's a very good point. There are other people out there who are doing just fine in a situation, and they may have pissed you off or made you incredibly angry, and you're carrying that on you, and you're really poisoning yourself rather than inflicting anything onto them. And I'm not saying to inflict anything onto them, mind you, but that you shouldn't also be carrying that within you and inflicting yourself with damage too, because that's all you're doing.
Right. Basically, we always have choices that we make.
Right.
And you can choose positive ones, especially including towards yourself, or you can choose negative ones.
And then again, it's all choice. And, sometimes it is the easier route, if you will, to take the negative. That doesn't mean it's the right route, though. Again, and anything that was good never fully came easily to anyone, right? And it doesn't just sort of happen most of the time, unless it's just pure crazy luck. And so it really is up to us to sometimes take the obstacle on and go, well, I could, easily just dwell in this anger and in this frustration, this negativity, or I put in a little bit of work, but I feel better, much more long term down the path. So in the end, I guess the big thing is it's on you, it's on us, and it's up to you on how you decide to bring in more positivity into your life.